Here's what I want to do this morning. I want to talk to you about an interesting topic that I think many of us experience, but I can't remember the last time honestly, I heard a message on it. What do you do when you're rejected? What do you do when someone disapproves of what you've done, and so because of that disapproval, they take some action? Okay? People experience rejection in a number of ways. It could be a job thing, right? It could be that you wanted and applied for a job and they said no. It could be that you wanted a promotion and someone backstabbed you, and so you didn't get the promotion you wanted and someone else got it. Anybody here ever been rejected by what I'm going to use the term as a love interest? It could be in high school that you wanted a certain person to ask you out and they didn't. It could be that some people have gotten to the point of being engaged and at some point someone decides to call off the engagement. It could be after you've been married a little bit of time, a long time, that someone said, you know what, it ain't working. And you feel rejected. You feel disapproved. You feel like pushed off. I read the story this week. I thought it was interesting. Out in Oregon, there was a couple. Their name was Kalina and Shane. They had planned their wedding. They had 40 guests. RSVP, we're going to be there. They had called and had 25 people tell them, yeah, we're coming. The day of the wedding, 5 people showed up. And she writes, she didn't intend to make, apparently what happened was someone shot a video. The video camera was rolling as she came in the back of the sanctuary, to her dismay, to see 5 people. And so her expression was caught on video. And she writes, I can't even describe having to hold my smile and walk through that. That was the biggest gut punch I've ever felt. Of 40 guests who had originally responded yes, I'd made direct contact with 25 who promised they'd be there. 5 showed up. That video was viewed 12 million times. 20,000 people commented on it. She said she posted it at a low spot in her life when she was motivated to show off the venue, which she said was beautifully decorated. I basically wanted people to see how cool it looked. I didn't intend it to be a commentary on only 5 people showing up. She said it was just so beautiful, I thought someone has to see this. She said in her TikTok video, it just makes me think, like, why? What did I do? What's wrong with me that no one wanted to show up? What did my husband ever do to deserve any of this? Why couldn't we matter enough for people to show up for our wedding? My hope is that people understand how important it is to show up. That's how she concluded her TikTok video. You ever been rejected? Ever had somebody say you're not good enough? Ever had a team say you try out and no, you're the 13th person, we're taking 12? Ever have go to join whatever club? I mean, I guess like Sam's Club doesn't reject you, right? So that would be like you could get there, right? Okay. Thought it was interesting. I don't know much of these kinds of stories, so I have to Google them. But Steve Jobs formed Apple. When I was doing a little bit of research, 2 years after he formed it with a co-partner, he was a millionaire. I think about 7 years after he launched it, Apple fired him. And some of you will know that, you'll remember that. He got fired. Dude's a millionaire, founds the company, but because of the toxic, quote unquote, toxic work environment he created, they fired him, only to rehire him back 11 years after. That's interesting. That's sort of a story you don't hear much about, right? That they would rehire you back. Walt Disney was rejected when he was applying for his first jobs and trying to get advertising, and one of the criticisms was the dude's not creative enough. maybe somebody didn't see talent, or maybe he wasn't very creative when he started, right? Because where I want to head this today is looking at what I think are several stories of rejection. Rejection is far more common than we realize. I read this week, last year alone, that said that 48% of people that applied for a loan were rejected. Barely half of the people who looked for extra money got accepted. It's interesting to me. I think you would be unique if you're sitting here today and you've not faced rejection. So I get that part, right? What I'm more interested in is like, what do you do when you've been rejected? Because some people take that rejection and they internalize it, and it leads to a downward spiral, and it can really mess you up. Is that the way it has to be? Or can there be a better way? In your notes, what I'm trying to say today is, oh man, this is last week. Dude, go figure that. We'll see if we can fix that. In your notes, the thing I say there is that rejection results from not measuring up to the expectations of others. One of the things that happens when you get rejected is that somebody else has some expectations and you just for whatever reason don't measure up. You're not meeting the expectations of someone else, all right? And when that happens, they've actually looked at the studies that say this, that it physically affects you. Depending on how bad you want X, if you're rejected from that or rejected from that person, it messes with you. To the point like, I was reading somebody was like, take Tylenol or take ibuprofen. Because physically, it does some stuff to you because you're like, oh man, it just messes with your body, okay? So in the Old Testament, if you have a Bible, we're looking at these unlikely heroes. I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Jephthah. He's found in Judges 10 and 11, okay? Judges 10 and 11. Now, he's mentioned in Hebrews 11 under that whole chapter of the heroes of the faith. And I was telling a friend this week, I've got a lot of files. I've been doing this for a long time, okay? I don't have a file on this guy, so I've never taught on him. And that's interesting to me because I've taught on a lot of characters and a lot of stories, but never this guy. So I want to walk you through his story. And it's not the redwood trees, but we're going to get there. Let's see, is this the guy? Do we have it here? What's this look like behind door number 1? There it is. Rejection results. Can we give that guy in the back a round of applause right there? That's like working on the fly. All right. His name means God breaks free or God will open up, will make a way, right? He's the 8th judge of Israel. So they've been going through this cycle, as we said. The whole book is about people that were like, all right, we're tight with God, we're following God, we're doing what God wants, and then we get complacent, and we're like, oh, it's just, I don't know, man, his life's so good. Do we really need God? That is so true of many, many people. I can't tell you the number of stories I hear from people that when life goes bad, they're like, I want to find God. I want to know if Jesus is real. Can Jesus help fix this? And then life starts going well for a while, and you're like, oh, I don't really need to be close to him. Well, that was this whole story. And so then they would cry out to God because they'd get in trouble, and God would deliver them again. So he's the 8th person that God rose up to say, hey, okay, if you want to get serious again, I haven't given up on you. He's mentioned in Hebrews 11:32 right there with Gideon and Samson and several of these judges as being a guy that, I look at that chapter sometimes and think, these are all really, really cool guys, man. These are great people of faith. I think maybe really what they are broken people, that there were spots in their life. Next week we're going to look at Samson. And whenever people think of Samson, they don't think of a great man of faith. They think of a guy who lost the battle of lust. And he ended up messed up with it. But in his end, he did something really cool. But God says, hey, you know what? Let's consider Samson. So we're going to look at him next week. This week, Jephthah, this guy we've never heard of, is an interesting character study and someone that got rejected by a bunch of people. And yet at the end of the day, God uses him to do some really cool stuff. Even at the end of his life, though, he does some really dumb thing. All right? What does the story look like? You're in Judges chapter 10. Look at verse 6. I'm going to just summarize what we're reading here. Beginning in verse 6, it says, the Israelites did evil. Oh, I left out the word again. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And they served the Baals and the Asherahs and the gods of Abram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines. I don't think they ever completely gave away their faith. I think what they did was they took in some other things to sort of supplement their faith. And that's what I would say to you. I doubt you have a wooden idol on your mantle over your fireplace. You may. I'll give you that. You may. Most people don't. But I would be surprised if a good majority of us don't have idols. If you were to define an idol as something that you take pleasure in other than Jesus, there you go. That's it. You were to take comfort in something other than Jesus, there it is. What might it be? It really might be a relationship. You know what? I mean, I know Jesus, but man, I really need somebody to make me happy. And so you're putting all your marbles in the love relationship, and when that thing goes south, you're all devastated, which you would be because you just got rejected. Not speaking out both sides of my mouth, but it's like it wasn't just Jesus, it was Jesus and. For some of you, it's your 401k, it's your money. For some of it, it's your job title. You need to get up the ladder. If something happens to the ladder and the ladder gets taken away from you, you're like, oh man. See? So idols here, these would have been like, hey, we got God, but you know what? We need somebody to help us like bring in the crops. We need to help someone send the rain. It wasn't that God would send the rain. It was, I don't know, the Democrats create the storms, or the Republicans create the storms, or some of this nonsense where I'm like, seriously? People think that? People think that. Okay? So they've got these various other things that they worshiped. And God's like, they come to a spot where, look down here, he said, for 18 years, verse 8, the enemies oppressed all the Israelites on the east of the Jordan. The Ammonites crossed the Jordan. They fought against Judah, Benjamin, the house of Ephraim. And Israel was in great distress. They were not happy. Life was very, very hard. Then they cried out to the Lord, we've sinned against you, forsaking God and serving the Baals, these other idols. And the Lord said, hey, when the Egyptians and all these groups, when they oppressed, didn't I help you? Didn't I save you? But you've forsaken me. You've left me to serve other gods, so I'm no longer going to save you. Go cry to your gods. You know what I'm fond of saying? When I encounter people that are experiencing difficulty in life and you're going a different direction apart from God, look, if that different direction is getting it for you, you're not coming to see me. You're not coming to talk to a pastor. You want to come talk to a pastor when the things you've been pushing and pursuing aren't getting it for you. And you're unhappy, and now you're like, what am I supposed to do? And I say, hey, maybe change your focus and put it back on Jesus. I don't know if it's true. I haven't verified it. It came my way late this week that I'm aware of somebody that they were pursuing life away from Jesus, and something bad happened, and it got their attention, and they said, hey, maybe we need to get back in church. Maybe we need to start following Jesus again. But why did they do that? Because something bad happened that they didn't have answers for. That's Israel. They've been chasing this stuff, thinking it was going to make them happy. They're not happy. God says, why don't you just go get those things you're chasing? And they're like, oh! Verse 13, they said to the Lord, we've sinned. Do with us whatever you think best, but please rescue us now. Then they got rid of the foreign gods, and they served the Lord. And the Lord could bear Israel's misery no longer. And so he began to raise up a leader. Verse 11, chapter 11, verse 1 says, Jephthah, the Gilead, was a mighty warrior. Interesting dude. If you read there, it says that his dad went out, had sex with a different woman other than his wife, and that's his mom. His father was Gilead, his mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they grown up, they drove him away. I can see that. Can't you see the family dynamic there? Good grief. You're in the family because dad had a one-night stand. Everybody knows it. I mean, I wonder what the woman, the mom, wonder what she did every day when she had to look at him and know that he's the result of your husband's unfaithfulness. And there got to be a spot in time when the rest of the family said, you're not one of us. And so they kicked him out. It says there that you're not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a group of adventurers gathered around him and followed him. Group of adventurers, think thugs. When you talk about David and his mighty men elsewhere in the Old Testament, it was a group of people that were probably also kicked out, a group of just renegades, like a gang. And he goes and joins himself with a gang. Because think about it. When you've been rejected, who do you hang out with? Where do you go? What's the most likely place you go? Other people have been rejected. Because you got that in common. You're not going to healthy places. It's really, really tough for dysfunctional people to hang out with functioning people because there's like this tension that you feel. And you're just not there. You're like, oh man, my family rejected, your family rejected you? Yeah, come on, let's go. And so this band forms. Sometime later, the Ammonites made war on Israel, and the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said, come, be our commander so we can fight against them. And he said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me out? I seriously was trying to process what this must have been like, what this conversation was like. So, the coach who rejects you from the team, you didn't make it, you weren't good enough. Right? Okay, you've licked your chops, you've licked your wounds, maybe you've gotten past it. 5, 6, 7 years later, okay, so we got to move past high school. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's Steve Jobs thing. Maybe it's your former boss. You got fired. Boom. And now they come back to you. And they say, hey, will you come back? Would you come back to work for us? What's going through your head? What are you seriously thinking? I mean, first you've got to go through all the baggage that you know that maybe you dealt with or maybe it's still lingering. I don't know, because we're not told. We do know he's like, wait, aren't you the guys that like booted me? Like when my family kicked me out, you guys were all in agreement with that. No one stood up and said, wait a minute, come on, man, he's still just a young man. He didn't do this. What? Do you think about this for a second? He got booted out for what his dad did. He got booted out for what his dad did, not for what he did. He's paying for the sins of his father. Think about that one for a little bit, parents. Because I think many of us would be like, we'd be cool with like, all right, man, I got it coming, I get it. And you may have it coming. But sometimes our kids pay for our indiscretions. Didn't you hate me? You drove me out of my dad's house. Why are you coming to me now when you're in trouble? Oh, I get it now. You need me. You need me. Elders said to him, no, nevertheless, we're turning you now. Come with us, lead us, fight for us. He said, suppose you take me back and the Lord lets me win. Am I really going to be your leader or are you going to kick me out again? The dude's honest. The elders said, no, the Lord is our witness. We'll certainly do as you say. We'll make you our leader. If you'll come back and you'll lead us and we win, we're going to do what you say. He said, okay. He then comes along and now he goes to the king of the enemy, the king of the Ammonites. And basically what you have in verse 12 down to about verse 27 is a conversation and where the king of Ammon says to Jephthah, you know the reason we're at battle is because like you took our land about 300 years ago and we want it back. How long have we been a country? Help me. How long has the USA been in existence? Two what? 250. So 50 more years than we've been a country. This king is holding a grudge, saying, you know what, about 300 years ago, you guys took some of our property and we want it back. That's why we're messing with you. And Jephthah's like, can't we just let this go? It's been 300 years. It's been a long time. We've had a lot of babies come and go since then. He says, and the king just says, no. Look at verse 28. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. It's not hard to get, is it? Isn't that what's happening with Ukraine and Russia? I'm not following it very closely, but isn't there a part of that conversation that's like, hey, Russia took some land, they want that land, Ukraine says no, you can't have that land, Russia says, but we took that land, it's under our control, it's our people. Strange things we'll do when we feel slighted. How long will you stay in that fight? And now I wonder if it's not so much about the fight about the land, is the fight about being disrespected. Because some of you will hang on to a long time if you feel slighted. Even today, someone may have done something or said something that hurt you some time back, and you're still hanging on to it. Why? Because you feel disrespected, you feel rejected, your pride's been wounded, you feel like you've been attacked, and you don't feel whole. The king wouldn't listen to him. Then Jephthah makes a stupid vow. Verse 29, Spirit of the Lord, God comes upon him. So he's going into the land, he's going to do battle, and he made a promise to God, verse 30, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out the door when I get home, whatever comes out the door, I will sacrifice back to you. And that was an interesting study for me this week, because when he gets back home from the victory, the first thing to greet him is his only daughter. Think about that for a second. You made a promise to God. Hey, God, whatever, whoever, I'm going to be, if you just do this, God, if you'll do this, if you'll, you know what it is? It's the person who's in a foxhole and says, God, if you do this for me, I will. And you make a promise. And then it happens, and you're like, oh man, what did I say? What did I promise? So it was interesting. The experts are divided. Some feel like he offered his daughter as a sacrifice, a burnt offering to God. Some feel that he offered his daughter as to serve in the temple for the rest of her life, never marry, never have children, which would have been what? His grandchildren. And there's no real definitive answer. We do know that she said to her dad, all right, Dad, you made a promise. Whatever you got to do, can you just give me a couple of months? I'm going to go off in the hills. I'm gonna mourn and never have any. It says there in the text. She says, verse, verse 36, she said, you've given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised. Now the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, but grant me this one request. Would you give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends because I will never marry? She says, can I have a sabbatical? Can I go for a couple of months and just cry? I'm never going to have a husband. I'm never going to have children, which in this culture was a big deal. So let's go, and she comes back, and then his story moves on. But, under that, it's like, we sometimes say and do some stupid things. Because what we're trying to do is bribe God. God, I want to show you how serious I am. This is how serious I am. I'm going to make a promise, God. If you do this, I will do. I'll give you 3 things I think we can take away this morning on facing rejection and being in a better spot than he found himself. The first one that I said was here, that when you worship the wrong idols, it will always lead to painful choices, painful consequences. If you worship your job, you will lose your family. If you worship money, you will alienate yourself. If you worship sex, you will cause harm on those that love you and that you care about. When I choose to worship things other than Jesus, we're going to end up in a bad spot. So as I said to you, his dad chose a prostitute and she had a son. I'm sure that wasn't part of the deal. I'm sure he just wanted a little pleasure, just a one-night deal. But now he's got a baby boy. And I've already demonstrated to you that baby boy grows up in a family that didn't want him. And there came a point when he didn't do anything wrong and his family said, get out. He chose to bribe God instead of trust the Lord. He chose to make a rash promise, and it cost his daughter her future. His daughter paid the price for his wanting to say, hey, God, can I get you on my side? When God already said, man, I'm with you. Listen, I accept you. I believe in you. I'm for you. You don't have to show me how serious you are. Just go out, and I love what Jesus said. Remember what Jesus said? Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Your word should be good enough. If you got to promise me, pinky swear, all that other nonsense, dude, that just tells me more about your character than I need to know. I do that a lot. I'll go into businesses, I'll have conversations with people, and they'll say, hey, do you want? And I'll say, man, I'm looking you in the eye. I'm looking you in the eye. Let's handshake on it. That's good for me. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. But I get society in which we live. Sometimes we've got to cover ourselves. When you worship at the wrong altar, it leads to bad things for you and often for those you care about. So, question today. Not a guilt thing, just a fair evaluation. What is the get it for you? What is it that you need to say, hey, I feel good about myself? What is it that you're looking to satisfy yourself? Because that's going to be the thing where you're going to put your eggs in that basket. You feel rejected, you want friends. You feel like nobody knows you, nobody wants you, so you go all in on being popular. That going to be it for you? Or the scripture says, man, the guy who's friendly, willing to make friends, be friendly, I would say keep your word, I would say be helpful for others, will himself have friends. The person who lives for himself, you're going to have a little bit tougher time because people see through that. And they're like, I don't want a part of that, right? Here's a second observation I want to leave you with. When you reject the Lord, you do have to replace him with something. Anytime you reject Jesus, you got to backfill that with something. So that's where the popularity, the power, the money, the prestige, hey, I want people to like me, because there's a hole there. So you're going to fill it with something, somehow. Second observation is this. We got to learn from our past, not live in it. Okay, so yes, you've heard that, right? And here's what I asked myself this week. What do I learn from my past? This dude had a past. Jephthah had a past. Okay? What's he supposed to learn? What did he learn? What came out of being rejected? That's an interesting thing. We're not very many of us in here. I bet you over half of you have faced the pain of rejection. I would be willing to say half of you. So what do we learn from this? Okay? What do I learn from my past that's painful that actually can benefit me? Because here's what you can do. You can stew on it, and you can be bitter, and you can be angry, and you can be hurt, and you can go down that path. What other choices do you have? I want you to think about something that's just curious to me. Man, I wish I could bring you up because I think the first person stories are the best. How many of you, I'm going to ask a show of hands, how many of you have been hurt in your past, something was painful to you, and you do feel like you benefited from it? like you learn from it? Can I see your hand? There's a few of us. There's a few of us. So you can learn from painful things in your past if you give yourself a shot. What happened to this guy? Well, he learned to be a leader. He was rejected, remember, by his family in his town. They kicked him out, but he ended up being the mighty warrior. He ended up being the guy that brought other people together. Somewhere along the way, he learned negotiating skills because he went to the king of Ammon and tried to say, hey, can we work this out? Instead of just taking a sword and saying, let me just run you through. He tried to be diplomatic in that. Where did that skill come from? Somewhere where he was out there running with this band of merry men. Okay? I think at some point he must have learned how to let go of stuff, because when his family and the elders come to him and say, hey, will you lead us? He doesn't tell them to go F off. I just said it, right? Because how many people would do that? Get out. You know, there was something in there where he just said, hey, you know what? Okay, you know what? I don't really believe you. But he entertained the conversation. How am I going to know? How am I going to know you guys are legit? It's like, oh man, here's what we'll do. We'll swear before God. We'll write it in, whatever. And like, okay. And he considers it as, okay, all right, I'll do it. Somewhere he learned that skill and he didn't hang on to the bitterness. I was looking and thinking this week, what can we learn from our past? That many people, I'm going to say this, many people struggle with. Here's a couple. Take responsibility for what you did instead of blaming others. Oftentimes in our past, when we've been hurt, we blame the other person and we hang on to that instead of looking and saying, well, do I have to own part of this? And anywhere you read, people who are able to take responsibility for their actions move forward. People that hang on and blame the other person are the ones who get stuck. Students, oh man, this doesn't apply to you. It just doesn't. I know it doesn't. Oh, wait a minute. How many? I'm probably. I got a teacher over here. I wish I could bring him up. How many? Let me just ask you, Tim. I'm going to call you out because you're a teacher. I know you're a teacher. Well, there's no teacher, right? You guys are both teachers. How many other teachers do I have in here? There. Okay. Here's my question. I just seriously want to know, and you just tell me maybe I'm all wet. Have you heard in your teaching career a parent come in and blame you for their kid not doing well? That's what I find hilarious. I seriously do. I mean, do you see the chuckle? It's like the teacher's fault that the kid's not doing well. So when I say to students, hey, sometimes you need to step up and take responsibility because it's not always the teacher's fault. There's wisdom in seeking wisdom. You don't know everything. Sometimes you make choices and decisions and you didn't seek outside input. You didn't listen for counsel. Solomon says in Proverbs, there is wisdom in listening to godly counsel. There's wisdom in talking to other people. Hey, here's what I'm dealing with. I don't want to show of hands. I just want you to ask you to think about something. When was the last really big decision you made? And did you ask for anybody's input? And what I venture to say is most of us don't do that. And you know the reason you don't do that? Is because there's a part of you that's afraid that if they don't agree with you, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do if you seek wisdom and someone says, you know what? You might not want to do that. The third thing that I think we can learn from our past mistakes is to not quit. Anyone who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new, said Albert Einstein. Thomas Edison made this thing. Thomas Edison said, I've not failed in making this. I've found 10,000 ways this doesn't work. There you go. That's perspective. Thomas Edison said, there's a better way to do something. You just got to find it. Thomas Edison said, there are 3 essentials to achieve anything worthwhile in life. They are first, hard work, second, stick-to-itiveness, and third, common sense. And the last thing that Edison said was, when you think you've exhausted all your possibilities, you haven't. There's something you can learn from your past, that when you are rejected, do you quit and become bitter? Or do you learn from it and try and grow from it and become a better person? Jephthah, I think, didn't wallow in self-pity. That's why he was allowed to be a mighty warrior and lead Israel out of where they were. The third observation I made from this life that I thought was sort of interesting to me was that in all of this, we serve Jesus, who knows a thing or two about being rejected. The crowd was much bigger than this. There was Jesus, and there was the known criminal. There was Jesus, who had spent time healing people, helping people, feeding people, being there for people, telling stories, trying to make their life better. And this guy by the name of Barabbas, who was known for having taken lives, stolen from people, beat people up, just a really, really bad guy. And in the middle is the impartial guy saying, okay, I'll release one of them. Whichever one you decide. And you all chose the criminal. That's what happened that day. Give us Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. 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 We want Barabbas. Let him for out of Jesus guy. Isaiah 53 says he was despised. Despised. Hated. He was rejected. Peter in the New Testament says the one that was going to be the foundation of it all, the builders rejected, same word, kicked out, disavowed, wanted nothing at all to do with. Jesus knows a thing or two about what it's like to be rejected. And the one who knows that says that he accepts us. He welcomes us. I was thinking about that for a minute. That's where my brain went. What does it mean to accept somebody? To welcome them. To say, come on. Come on, let's be a part. Come on, I want you on my team. The opposite of getting cut from the team is the coach saying, I want you to play on my team. I'm going to give you a uniform. You're going to get to wear the hat. I want you. In a culture, in a time where many of us reject and feel the sting of rejection, Jesus says, I want you. That's what this table is. Communion is the time that we remember that the Father accepted the sacrifice of his Son. And the Son says, you are my friends. To everyone who is following me, I call you friend. I don't call you a slave. I don't call you a servant. I call you a friend. I call you a teammate. I call you a brother and a sister. So that we this morning celebrate a Savior who accepts us, who welcomes us. And so Paul would say then in Romans 15, accept one another just as Christ has accepted you. And that is so hard. Because you know what? You don't think politically like I do. Like, I can get it. I can honor, like, if we all think the same, walk the same, got our ducks all in a row, that's easy to like you. Easy to accept you. But what if you think differently? What if you believe differently about life? What if you see the world differently? What if you're younger or older? What if I'm blue collar and you're white collar? What if you're type A and I'm not? The what ifs go how long? And just as you've been accepted in Christ Jesus, so accept one another, welcome one another, appreciate one another, celebrate differences instead of letting them divide you. Why do I think this is such a big deal? Because we live in such a fractured time that if you don't think and act and toe the line like you're supposed to, you're the enemy. you're the bad guy. And Christ says, I've come to abolish those lines. Christ says, I stood up for you. And so that's what communion is. That's what this table is a reminder that Jesus, the one rejected, died, rose again, and is coming again, and in the meantime calls you and I to accept one another, to reject no more, to be a people that welcome others. What's that look like? It means talking. It means seeing how you're there. It means understanding that I'm to live life for the glory of God. Any Eagles fans here? Any Philadelphia Eagles fans? Not a big deal then. I didn't expect as much. But I did find it interesting, the team's coming up. Nick Foles. Went in for Carson Wentz. Carson went down with an injury. Nick was the backup quarterback. He took them through, let's see here, most of the 2017 season. And Carson was ready to come back on week 3 of the 2018 season. In between there, if you remember what happened, was the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 17, and Nick was voted MVP as quarterback. Backup quarterback, starting quarterback goes down, backup quarter leads Philly to the Super Bowl, wins the MVP, week 3 of the new season, he's back on the bench. How many of you could do that? How many of you could face that kind of rejection? Because think about it, he got demoted. You just won the Super Bowl MVP and you're back on the bench. You're not good enough. That's what the coach said. You're not good enough to start anymore. We're going to start the other guy. And so people were asking him. In fact, he just retired a year ago. Nick did, okay? People were asking him, basically, how are you dealing with this? How do you go from backup to winning, getting your team in the Super Bowl? You're the Super Bowl MVP, and then you get demoted again? Like, what kind of crazy is that? And here's what I thought was interesting. He said, when they, what they see as a riches to rags sports story, I see as part of God's divine plan. I've said all along that my desire is to play for God's glory, not mine, and that's exactly what I plan to do. My unique path from backup to Super Bowl MVP to backup again is a powerful message to share with people, and God has given me a platform to do that. To cheerfully return to the backup role after reaching the pinnacle of the sport contradicts everything the world tells us about success, fame, money, and self-worth. But to me, it's a tangible reminder that we are called to a life of humility, a life of service. Some people might think I deserve a better deal, but it's not about what I deserve. It's never been about what I deserve. The truth is, I've already been given far more than I deserve. I have a wonderful family. I have a job I love. I've experienced grace and forgiveness. I have great friends and coaches and teammates. Everything I have is a gift from God, and I'm thankful for all of it. I am where I am now because of God's grace, and I'll continue to follow him wherever he leads. I'm not sure that was Jephthah's mindset, but I can certainly see how he could get there. Because he didn't say, hey, you guys kicked me out once, I'm done. God, if you need me to help these people, I'll help them. God, if you need me to be there, stand up against the enemy, I'll stand up against the enemy. What's the message for you? I would say you've rejected no more. I would say don't live like someone who's been like cast off. Live like a child of the King, and if his role is for you to be a Super Bowl MVP, you do that with grace and dignity. And if his role is to put you back on the bench and say, hey, serve me here, keep serving me, point people to Jesus, you can say, man, I'm there. I'm all in, God, because you've been good to me. Don't be rejected no more. because this table reminds you you've been accepted. Let's sing with these guys.